My name is Tony Lenart. I'm from the Institute of Advanced Leadership, the international chairman, and I'm also very proud to have been with the MUBS Leadership Centre from the beginning. One of the interesting things in working around the world is looking at what different people are interested in. And there's a very useful research tool which is called Google Insights. And it gives you an insight into what people are looking for when they go on the internet. So if you actually search for corporate governance, you can see the interesting thing is the main people searching for it are in Africa. And the highest is in Zimbabwe. So what that's saying is, as a percentage of any search that is done in a country, Zimbabwe leads the world in terms of the interest in corporate governance. Clearly it does not mean that Zimbabwe leads the world in corporate governance. In the same way as Uganda, which is the third ranking in the world, does not lead the world in corporate governance. But when it comes to interest, it is there. If you look for corruption, again, you find a strong interest in corruption in Africa. Uganda heads the world when it comes to interest in corruption. Now, I don't know when people are looking there whether they are looking for how to be corrupt, or how to overcome corruption, or how to do corruption better without getting caught. But definitely there is interest. The other thing that you notice is when people look for entrepreneurship, there is also very high interest in that in Africa. And so again, you see a large range, and Uganda is the fourth top in the world. According to Google searches, Tanzania is the top. When it comes to looking after your customers, though, which is a very core aspect of being a successful entrepreneur, if you look under customer relationship management, you'll notice that Uganda does not show on the map. Kenya does. South Africa does. Nigeria does. And of course, they are the most successful countries when it comes to corporate performance. So, when it comes to customer relationship management, not a lot of interest. When it comes to customer service training, it's only South Africa that remains on the map. And you see a lot of interest in India, Australia, America, Canada, and Europe. Management training. Again, you see those three countries in Africa: Kenya, South Africa, Nigeria. So now that you actually have an open market in East Africa, very, very important that you focus on the sort of things that have made Kenya successful so that you can compete against them. There is no reason why Ugandans cannot compete against Kenyans. And yet when you look throughout some of the top businesses in Uganda, you find Kenyan CEOs running it. And let's look at some of the next slides. Let's see if we can get some of an idea why there are Kenyans in many of those top roles and not Ugandans. So if you continue looking, you find that when it comes to self-improvement, India is very high. The English-speaking countries, in terms of English as the original language, are also very high. But again, only South Africa in terms of African countries. When it comes to executive coaching, South Africa is very strong. Australia is very strong. Parts of Europe are very strong. But again, only South Africa in Africa. When it comes to excellence, now at least we're seeing a few of those other countries. We're seeing Kenya and Nigeria again, but we don't see Uganda. And my contention is, if you're going to focus on one thing, if you want corporate governance, focus on excellence. Because excellence will give you corporate governance. But corporate governance won't give you excellence. We'll talk about a bit more about that in a moment. And then when we look at work ethic is an absolutely core part of what corporate governance is trying to achieve. It's trying to make sure that the right things are done, that there's a level of ethics applied at work. But when you look at work ethics, you don't see Africa anywhere. Even India's disappeared. It's really only the English countries. If you look up here, you can see US, Australia, Canada, UK, and that's it. The rest are zeros. So if you want to be successful, make sure you have that work ethic. Not just because God will like it, not just because your managing director will like it, but because you will get the most fulfillment from your job. You will enjoy your job. Your job will be something that you do because you want to. Who of you, put up your hands, who of you play soccer? Can I see a show of hands? Who play soccer? Who enjoys soccer? Can I see a show of hands? Who enjoys soccer? Watching it on TV, anything like that? Who enjoy other sports? Can I see a show of hands? Put your hand up right high so I can see who enjoys any sort of sport. Okay, so now who of you get paid for doing sport? For playing sport? So you all enjoy it a lot. You put a lot of energy into it. Whether it's energy making sure you're watching TV at 3 a.m. because you want to see it live, talking about it with your mates, or energy from playing the game. You put a lot of investment into it, you get a lot out of it, and yet none of you are getting paid for it. So then if you go to work and you have that same level of energy, commitment, discipline, focus, enthusiasm, you'll get the same sort of results. There'll be a passion. You'll enjoy yourself. You'll get a lot out of work. And guess what? The corporate governance will be there. You will be focused on doing the right thing for the company. But the interesting thing is many companies will spend money on doing corporate governance training, and yet they don't spend money on shifting the mindset of their staff. If you don't shift the mindset of your staff, it doesn't matter how many corporate police you have. You still won't get the results that you're seeking. If you think about it, think of an organization or two who have the most level of governance in terms of processes, procedures, steps, protocols, bodies that are checking that the right thing is done. Who comes to mind when you think of an organization like that? Sorry? You? All right. Okay, you're a very soft speaker. You have a lot to share. Speak up.
Uganda Revenue Authority.
Yeah. Okay. Who else? When you think about it, it is largely the government and the UN have the most procedures, the most types of governance protocols in place. Now, when I ask you who you think of as the most corrupt organizations, do you not also think of the government? Not just in Uganda, but really anywhere, but certainly African governments. And again, the UN does have a little bit of a PR problem in terms of corruption. But even more importantly, what the UN has a problem for is bureaucracy. That things don't get done, and that if you join the UN, or you join a government organization, you might start with a lot of passion, enthusiasm. You want to do the best. But there's so many rules and procedures you have to follow that you can't actually do the best. And so soon you get to the point that you're no longer thinking, what is the best thing I can do? And instead you're saying, what do I have to do? Now when that is the question that you're asking, what do I have to do to survive? You're not going to get the best performance. Whether you're working for the UN or for a company. And if I can give you one piece of advice, when you leave MUBS, or many of you have already left MUBS and are in very senior positions, when you go back to your company, shift the question that you ask yourself and stop asking, what must I do? What should I do? What do I have to do to keep my job? And instead ask, what's the best thing that I can do? And when you ask that, you'll be far more successful, and you won't just keep your job, but you'll be promoted many, many, many times. And if you leave your work and you take a job, you become self-employed, you will be very successful. So my argument then is that much as it is important to have corporate governance processes in place, and you need to do that, you need to have a policing function. But if that's your primary concern and you are not focused on excellence, then you won't get the actual results that you're seeking. Now, if you want to do an experiment, find one of the most successful people you know. Get them to send in their resume and an application letter without their name. Yeah. So that the HR manager doesn't know who it is. And see how well they go. I suspect that they won't go that well. If Steve Jobs was still alive and he wanted to work at Moore's, and he sent in an application without his name, I think there's a very, very good chance he would not be employed, because the protocol, the steps, the procedures would say, no, this guy doesn't have a PhD. No, he doesn't meet our criteria of what we think the ideal lecturer would be like. And in the same way, if he applies to be the general manager, the managing director of a company, or even a lower level job, a training manager, a sales manager, there's a very good chance that they will say, no, he's overqualified. And to me, this idea of overqualified is one of the most stupid ideas around. If I have a heart problem, and I go to a heart surgeon, and I hear he's the best in the world, do I go, oh no, that's a problem, he's overqualified? Or do I say, fantastic? Now maybe I say, can I afford it? And then I give him a call. And I say, how much do you charge? I don't know if I can afford you. But I certainly don't just reject it. And yet many companies around the world have this prejudice against excellence, which they call being concerned about being overqualified. So if you want real corporate governance, if you want a company that is doing the right thing, looking after everyone, first of all, hire people with real ethics, real morals, who seek excellence. And then they will just do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, instead of because they have to. Professor Bulunwa is someone that I greatly admire. If I go out in the street and I interview 100 people and I say, what do you think of Professor Bulunwa? I suspect about 95%, 90 to 95% will say, he's fantastic. He's one of the top people in the country. He's incredibly committed. He's really built Moore's to be very, very successful. Though there are some people that don't like him because of his success. So we have an amazingly talented manager. But if I ask the IGG, the former IGG, what do they think of Professor Bulunwa? Maybe Raphael Baku will give me a different answer. Maybe within the kingdom, Pasoka, certain very small percentages of people who were in senior positions might give me a different answer. And they would probably try to find some little things that he did. Oh, we have this particular protocol and you meant to do this and this and this and this, and in fact he just did that. And yet the reality is, in every job he's done, he's achieved enormous results. So to me, Professor Bulunwa is the example of excellence. Not all of the processes and procedures that you blindly ask people to follow. You see, if you think about one of the worst managers around, the worst ones who are stealing, you'll find that they're not interested in the rules. And then if you look at a mediocre manager, you'll find he is very interested in the rules. He wants to keep his job. So he doesn't care what's best for the firm, he just does what he's meant to. And then you look at the best manager, and again you find he's not so interested in the rules. What he's interested in is performance, his results. And so, very important to build an organization that focuses on excellence. And from that, you will get some levels of corporate governance. If we have a look at boards of directors. Now, one of the teachings within corporate governance, and like I say, it is important. You need to do the sort of standard corporate governance to make sure that the right things are done. But you have to be very careful that you don't naively think that you will be able to police excellence. Now, this is an example of an excellent board. It's the 12th most respected company in the world. It's the top company in India called Tata. Tata and Tata. 60% of their shareholding is in CSR, in NGOs, in working to actually help India and the world. An extraordinary company. And phenomenally successful. They're worth $100 billion. Now when you look at them, and don't worry about the nationality, don't worry about the skin color. That's irrelevant. Look at their eyes. Look at how approachable they are. I'll give you a couple of other examples. This is the board of AMP. I did a little bit of work with them in Australia. They're a $90 billion company, $90 billion in assets. I trained thousands of people from the Commonwealth Bank of Australia, and they are now the top company in the world according to Fortune magazine. This is their board of directors. So let's compare them, and like I say, nothing to do with skin color. It's the approach, the thinking, the attitude, a number of other factors we'll look at in a moment. But now let's have a look at a Ugandan board. This was an advertisement in New Vision newspaper on the 3rd of December. And they're saying how passionate they are about your life. Do you believe them? They say they're incredibly focused on customers. Do you believe them? That they are focused on excellence, on teamwork, on transparency, accountability, integrity, leadership by example. I don't have to ask, I can hear from the audience. You don't believe them. So what is the difference? Now, if you happen to work in this organization and you realize something wasn't happening the way it really should be, yeah? Would you feel safe going to any one of them and telling them? You would, yeah? What if you realized something was going wrong in this company? Would you feel safe going to one of them and telling them? Yeah? So that's a pretty important part of corporate governance. If you don't feel safe telling anyone that something's wrong, wrong things will continue. If you do feel safe telling the bosses that something is wrong, and do you think that if you tell them, they'll try and do something about it? Do you think so? Yeah. So what you need is to get your employees looking like this. Black versions of this. Doesn't matter about the skin color. But you want them looking open, looking interested, a level of intellectual engagement, a focus on excellence, a drive to do the best that they can. And if you don't create that, you won't have true corporate governance. And yet the interesting thing is how many companies, if you go to them and you say, I want to do work to make your directors more approachable, they probably won't hire me. If I say, I want to help your people to change their attitude and their approach, a lot of people will say, I don't know, that sounds a bit vague. And one of the most extraordinary things that I've found in Uganda is even if I go to a company and I say, look, I don't expect you to believe how successful I am with your company. I know that I've helped the Commonwealth Bank become the top in Australia and Cisco the top in the world and MTN top in Uganda and Rwanda and helped Orion increase its profits 80% and I've helped turn around NSSF according to Richard B. Rugaba. But I don't expect you to believe that. I'm happy to work for you and to guarantee you a 600% return on your funds. And at the end, if you haven't got that, I'll give you back all of your money. If necessary, you give me a post-dated check. I will guarantee the work. And you know the interesting thing is that when I do that, around about 3% of people are really interested, and around about 97% don't care. They're not really focused on performance. They're not focused on excellence. They're focused on getting by. What does everyone else do? What's normal? What should I be doing? Oh, I don't know, this idea that you give us money back, I don't know, I might have to fill an extra form in. That's not kind of not normal operating procedure. And they don't even think that maybe I'm only offering that because I know I will give a lot more than a 600% return on their investment. So my encouragement to you, first of all as individuals, is to be excellent. And then as managers is to create an environment that fosters excellence. Just very quickly, by the way, these are some of the people that I've worked with. You see very handsome young men there. And you see these are very engaged, approachable, intelligent, committed, looking at big ideas. This is NSSF before my training, this is NSSF during the training. So, the Gallup organization did research of 25 million employees in 189 different countries. What they found is that you can massively improve productivity through changing the culture of the firm. Changing the level of engagement of people, making them look more like the lady on the left that's very engaged instead of the guy on the right who is actively disengaged. And what you find is that when you look in Australia and the US, we lead the world in terms of engagement. And yet, even in Australia and the US, only about 24 to 29% are actively engaged. A lot of people are not engaged. So I think it's a worry in Australia. But now let's have a look at Africa. 10% are engaged. And the worst thing is 33% are disengaged. So that means that you have one person walking forward, and you have 3 people walking backwards. One person moving forward, 3 people moving backwards. I don't think it'll take long at that rate till your company goes out the door. So, shifting the level of engagement is very, very important. It helps in so many different areas. You can see productivity and customer service is increased, absenteeism is reduced, shrinkage is reduced, etc. But there's a huge disparity between how the CEO and the top leadership team feel about these issues compared to the staff. So if you look at how committed is the senior leadership team to creating a positive, productive workplace culture, the non-managers will tell you, I think a lot of them will tell you, no, they're not committed. But if you ask the CEO, they all say, yeah, we're really committed. And then if you have a look at things like the skill level, how skilled is the top team? Now, my own definition, Tony Lenart's definition of leadership. Leadership is about creating the conditions in which great results occur. Okay? That's my own definition that I came up with. Management is about creating results. Leadership is about creating the conditions in which great results occur. So, the managers know what they should do. And if there's a lot of corporate governance, then there's strict procedures and protocols and processes and steps that tell them what they have to do. But it doesn't mean that they're very good at creating the environment in which the best results occur, to create the productive culture. And what you see is non-managers are saying, no, they definitely don't have that, but the senior leaders are saying they do. So, if you want to really get results, then focus on excellence. Apart from anything, when you're focused on excellence, you will hire diverse people. The sort of people that are willing to speak up and to say, this needs to be done to help the company. Because they're more focused and more committed to the company than just surviving. So if you don't have an environment that embraces different people, you won't really have proper corporate governance. And yet the way a typical HR manager employs is they say, who do we think will be a good fit? And they write down a number of criteria. And then when they do an interview, they're interviewing and they're saying, yeah, you meet this criteria, this one, yeah. Steve Jobs, who can I pretend is Steve Jobs? Steve Jobs, you're in a bright orange shirt. You must be someone that's innovative. So then they'll interview Steve Jobs and they'll go, oh no, you don't have a degree, and oh, you didn't work in a similar position in your last job, and the amount of experience in the banking consumer divisions, no, you don't have that. No, sorry. It's a bit like running the Olympics. And instead of giving the gold medal to the fastest athlete, you give the gold medal to the person who most matches the criteria that you thought the gold medal winner might meet. Yeah. So, when you want corporate governance, don't just focus on the processes, on the procedures. Look at the people and look at the intangibles. I don't have time to show you now, but if you compare the value of most companies on the stock exchange to the book value, you will find that companies on the stock exchange will sell for a multiple of what the book value is worth. So just an example, I was working with a group called Tobacco down the road. They make generic pharmaceuticals. In their industry, the value, the market capitalization of companies is 4 times what the book value is. And so that means 75% of their value is in intangibles. But how many companies really invest in intangibles? Give a lot of focus to intangibles. And if you don't do that, and yet your company is worth 75% of what it's worth is in intangibles, then you are likely to be going backwards out the door. So that's my encouragement. Focus on excellence. Focus on engaged people. Focus on intangibles. Focus on the thinking, attitude, and approach of employees, as well as the standard elements of corporate governance. Thank you very much.
Join me in thanking Tony for this wonderful address.
I'm going to students, and I'm pursuing a bachelor's degree in leadership and governance. I wanted to ask Mr. Tony, how can the government of Uganda look forward to fight corruption? Because we have tried many times, and there are some organizations that the government have put, but still it is not giving out much return. So what is the way forward? What can we do so that we can curb that disease in our country? Thank you.
Thank you. So the question was, what would be my advice to the government of Uganda in fighting corruption? So I have actually designed an entire system that I think would be very helpful, and if anyone out here wants to pay me for my advising on that, I can go into real depth in terms of it. But in brief, there are a few different elements. One of the things I think that would be useful is to actually run sting operations. A sting operation basically means that someone comes along with a hidden camera and records people who are asking for bribes, and then there is action taken. And you do that with an international group of people who are very committed to fighting corruption, who come from a country where it is not endemic, working with locals, and using the sting operation, using hidden cameras, and doing it in a very substantive way, you can then actually create a condition in which people start to realize and indeed where the situation changes such that it is more dangerous to be corrupt than to not be corrupt. If you live in a country where over 50% of people are corrupt, then it is more dangerous maybe to be corrupt than not corrupt. And if that occurs, all of the advice changes. One of the advices that's given within corporate governance is that by having more people on a board or more people checking things, you have less likelihood of corruption. And largely that's true. But if more than 50% of those people are corrupt, you're not necessarily protecting yourself. You think about the statistics. I've asked a simple question in Australia, which is, if you had $100,000 in your corporate bank account, and if you were stupid enough to give the manager, make him a sole signatory, what percentage would steal? And the answer is about 3% would steal. Then I've said the same question, but with $10,000. So I've asked Ugandans, and I've said, imagine you have a company with $10,000 in the bank account, and you're stupid enough to give the manager, to make him a sole signatory of that account, what percentage would steal? And suddenly the percentage goes massively higher, well above 50%. The lowest answer I've got was from the former head of the army. Maybe for him it's a lower answer because people realize it's not a good idea to rip off the former head of the army. But so if only 3% steal, and let's say that the manager has to sign, his manager, or if he's the top person, then a board member has to sign, and an accountant has to sign. So then the chance that they're all corrupt is 3% times 3% times 3%, which is like 0.00 something. On the other hand, if 80% of people are corrupt, or 90% are corrupt, then the chance that all three of them are corrupt is still somewhere around 60-70%. So the chance that they're all corrupt is still very high. There's a slight, they have to work together, that makes it a bit harder. But anyway, so sting operations is a key thing. Another thing is, I would like to see the police be less political. If the police are sometimes seen and perceived by the public as working against the public, as working for certain interests, people will be a lot less likely to go to the police if they see something wrong. I asked you a question when I was presenting, showing you some board members of a parastatal company in Uganda, and you were saying you wouldn't go to them if something was wrong. So you need a police force that is really seen to be impartial, open, keen, wanting to help. Also, you need engaged people, whether it's engaged police or engaged boards. There are a lot of boards in the company, and you have a look at them, you can see that they've been placed there with more to do with loyalty than excellence. Clearly there will be corruption, there will be lack of performance if people hiring is based on loyalty rather than performance. Yes, you want loyalty. Yes, it's a consideration. But ideally the loyalty is not a blind loyalty to a person, but the loyalty to doing the best result for the organisation. So that would be my advice on tackling corruption in Uganda.
Tona, I'm always happy to hear from you, and I will need a full report of the Gallup study. It's an interesting bit of part of my scholarship. I'll make one comment on what can we do as scholars in leadership, as practitioners. It all begins with us. I think is my take home today. That as you look at your neighbor, can we every day use the ASIMA checklist to tell what do I contribute in openness, in transparency, in honesty?
Let our leaders lead by example. That we, the younger generation, we shall look on to what they have done, and we start from there in order to take up the mantle of this nation to another level. Thank you very much.
The way he started his topic, by the time he gets to the real matter, you've already got a very good foundation background about what he's really talking about.
He always has another way. of letting you pick something.
It is what the business community in Uganda need, and the government as well.
Wow, liked it.